Welcome to Blaze News, The Mandate. Donald Trump has been in office for 100 days. I am Jill Savage. Tonight on the agenda on Trump's 100th day in office, the Small Business Association highlighted his greatest economic achievements. The Trump administration has added over 300,000 jobs, made over 75 fair trade deals, and secured $5 trillion in investment and cut core inflation to its lowest levels in 4 years. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt listed off just some of these investments.
Press is not talking nearly enough about the positive impact of President Trump's deregulation campaign. And investments from the biggest companies and countries in the world are pouring in under this president. So far, total investment commitments under the Trump administration have reached more than $5 trillion, including $500 billion from Apple in U.S.-based manufacturing and training, $500 billion from NVIDIA and AI infrastructure, $100 billion from TSMC and U.S.-based chips manufacturing, and the $500 billion private investment by OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank in AI infrastructure as well. All of these investment commitments are estimated to generate at least 451,000 new high-paying jobs for American workers and families.
Since Trump has taken office, only 9 illegal immigrants have been released into the United States. That's a 99.9% decrease, less than the same time period under Joe Biden. Now, political commentator Hugh Hewitt broke this down on Fox News.
And the most important thing of the 100 days, Dana, is President Trump ran on closing the border, and the border is closed. No one is coming across the border, and Democrats did not do that by choice. Now, it is obvious it was a choice because Donald Trump closed it. So Democrats are going to have to run with that burden, especially Vice President Harris, as she was the border czar. She opened it. She couldn't close it. Donald Trump has.
As we all know, Donald Trump has launched a trade war against China, but he might have to fight a certain company in America as well. Amazon complied with a Chinese edict to disallow reviews on a collection of Xi Jinping's writings and speeches. And they also partnered with an arm of Chinese propaganda system to create a selling portal known as China Books. Amazon also recently announced that it will display prices for increases due to Trump's tariffs on all of its products. Here is Caroline Leavitt's reaction.
This is a hostile and political act by Amazon. Why didn't Amazon do this when the Biden administration hiked inflation to the highest level in 40 years? And I would also add that it's not a surprise because, as Reuters recently wrote, Amazon has partnered with a Chinese propaganda arm. So this is another reason why Americans should buy American. It's another reason why we are onshoring critical supply chains here at home to shore up our own critical supply chain and boost our own manufacturing here.
That didn't last long, though. Amazon is now denying that they ever plan to show price increases due to tariffs. Meanwhile, Walmart announced new programs and investments to expand support for American-made products in small businesses. Their Grow With Us program will offer a 4-step framework of training, mentorship, and resources for small businesses to grow alongside Walmart. And finally, Keith Kellogg, assistant to the president and special presidential envoy for Ukraine, detailed what Trump hopes to achieve in Ukraine. Watch.
What the president wants is a permanent, comprehensive ceasefire, sea, air, land, infrastructure for a minimum of 30 days, and then we can extend that. He's absolutely right. The president has this one right on the money. And that's where we want to go to. And when you look at everything the Ukrainians are willing to work with, now it's over to the Russians, over to Putin. Okay, we've got one side. Now you need to come up with the other side. And I think we're close.
Now let's go ahead and bring in Blaze News editor-in-chief Matthew Peterson. So MP, Donald Trump, 100 days now in office. We've been waiting for this. This is a big mile marker here for the Trump administration.
Yeah, I mean, when we thought of this show, right, when we were talking about changing Blaze News Tonight to Blaze the Mandate, one of the first things that came up as a measure is, well, let's do the mandate for the first 100 days. And here we are. going strong, because the first 100 days is traditionally a time to look back and say, okay, how were the early days of the administration? And, those of you who've been with us, I mean, it's been heady, it's been wild, it's been, all the things happening all the time. And it's a whole new era. So it's hard to even know where to start. But I think what you can say is the start has been very, very strong. And despite what most of the media is trying to do in castigating the administration or saying it was a failure, I mean, it's just obviously not. It's been very successful.
It's been very successful, and it's been very helpful here to have a show and to have Donald Trump signing an executive order after executive order. And there have been absolutely so many headlines every day that it's almost difficult to just fit everything into one show. But little did we know 100 days ago that we would be talking about trade wars as often as we are. And yet, here we are. But I want to bring up Amazon because they flip-flopped pretty quickly this morning once word got out that they were going to put the tariff prices online. And then, oh, wait, you all know that we're going to do that? Nobody's actually happy with it? Okay, we're going to say that we never wanted to do that in the first place.
Well, I can tell you right now that Jeff Bezos does not want to anger this administration, and he's been trying to, show that he's not just on one side of the coin. I think the flip-flop is telling. It's the commercial cultural movement that we're in. People understand that it's a commercial cultural war, and that politics does necessarily splay into, it goes into it. So here's the thing about Amazon. Okay, here's the thing about Amazon, though. I think, like a lot of people, I'd be perfectly willing to allow them to put up the tariff increases if they also told us where all this crap comes from.
We need the country of origin based on every Amazon post as well. I'd be with you for that. One thing that we did know that we were going to get from the Trump administration, absolutely, without a doubt, we knew that illegal immigration would be tackled. It was something that Donald Trump ran on, and we are now down 99.9% on that. So it's the meme. No, you didn't. It was always there. It could always work. You just needed a president to go out there and try and enforce this.
Yeah, I mean, it really does put the lie to all the big lie of the last 4 years. And there's no question. There's no argument. It's just you can just see it with your own eyes. You have people come in where there is a will, there's a way, who want to seal the border, and they do, and it's done.
Well, we'll continue on in Washington, D.C. We'll have our reporter Rebecca Zelko. She'll showcase some House Republicans' top priorities coming up. We're just talking about tariffs. They're hitting right now. They're hitting pretty hard, and grocery prices, they're climbing again, but they're not happening at goodranchers.com because they have 100% American meat. They don't have to have any of the tariff price hikes because all their products are made in America. So right now, when you subscribe, you can get free meat for life. You can get your choice of ground beef, wild-caught salmon, seed oil-free chicken nuggets, or bacon in every box. Now, that's over $300 of free meat for every year that you save subscribed. And Good Ranchers, it's not just delicious, it's actually smart for you. They have the pre-trimmed, vacuum-sealed cuts. It's going to save you money and honestly make it a lot easier for you every day. Now, the average family throws away about $500 of meat a year. So don't wait. Go ahead and lock in your price right now and lock in that free meat while you're at it. And take $40 off with my code Jill at checkout. So visit goodranchers.com today. Don't leave your food up to chance. Lock in and secure your supply of American meat at a steady price today at goodranchers.com. And you can claim that $40 off and free meat for life with code Jill. Goodranchers.com. American meat delivered. The Trump White House has allowed unprecedented access to the press, and that has continued this week on Capitol Hill. Our political reporter, Rebecca Zelko, took advantage of the opportunity to speak with some of the biggest names in American conservatism, and she joins us right now. So, Rebecca, you were there with us at the White House last week on Media Row. So how does this differ for you for the podcast row up there on Capitol Hill?
On Capitol Hill, it really was more of a free-for-all. You were pretty much given a small booth to set up your sign and get all your equipment set up, and you pretty much snag lawmakers as they're just walking around. So it was a great opportunity to mingle with lawmakers and staffers, but spontaneity was definitely at the front of that experience.
Well, let's go ahead and go through to Marjorie Taylor Greene. You spoke with her about her non-negotiables for the congressional resolution. Let's take a look.
No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security. These were President Trump's campaign promises that he said over and over again, promising the American people. And these are the promises that Congress has to deliver. And I'll go further on that. Some of our conservatives and some of our Republicans are against these campaign promises. And it's been an argument within our conference.
So, Rebecca, why were some of these initiatives so important there to Marjorie Taylor Greene?
I mean, they're not just important to her, they're important to her constituents and to Americans across the country, all 77 million who voted to elect the president back into the White House in November. She was talking about no tax on tips. This is a huge one, of course. And you know, sort of these times where there's some of this economic uncertainty with this ongoing trade war, a lot of these tariffs are leaving Americans a bit worried about the future. And so these, you know, codifying these things, it's not just a temporary win in this current climate of uncertainty, but it's also a long-term win for Americans. They're able to, you know, to really enjoy the fruits of the MAGA mandate and the Trump administration.
So speaking of the congressional resolution, Congressman Eric Burlison told you excessive government spending was one of his non-negotiables. Let's take a look at that.
So when people go to the grocery store or go to a restaurant and you're angry, it's because Congress is spending 20% more than we're bringing in. That's why inflation is so high. That's not going to be fixed by cutting taxes. We have to, you know, if we do, we're just lying to the American people and we're taxing them through inflation or high interest rates. So we really need to bring down spending if we're going to unlock the tax cuts, if we're going to unlock reducing inflation, if we're going to unlock reducing interest rates. Congress needs to do its job and cut spending.
So we all know how much Congress loves to cut spending. Any thoughts as to how the Congressman Burlison is going to be able to slash government excess, or really any government?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Congress definitely has a bit of a spending problem. And it's important to point out that it really is going to have to be a team effort. It's not enough to just have a couple outspoken members of Congress who are going against the grain and really opposing this excessive spending that we've seen over the last decade, especially. And so we have representatives like Congressman Burlison, but also all of the representatives I spoke to, basically, it seemed like there was this renewed appetite to actually reel in spending and to prioritize fiscal responsibility. And I want to reiterate, now that we're back on the Hill, all the lawmakers are back in D.C. after a brief 2-week recess, reconciliation is back on the table. These negotiations are resuming. And last time these negotiations were left off, you had the House saying that the spending target was a $4 trillion cut, whereas the Senate basically said the best we could do is $400 billion. This is a huge gap that they're going to have to bridge, and it's going to take members of Congress like Eric Burlison to actually make that happen.
Well, rogue judges is also on everybody's minds right now. And you had the chance to speak with Congressman Ralph Norman about that topic. Let's see what he had to say.
What's happened with activist judges is they're really politicians that wear robes. That's not their role. When they started objecting to known terrorists in this country that Biden let in, being deported overseas and saying and make the claim they don't have the legal right and they need due process, they're illegals. No, they don't. And President Trump is doing the right thing to ignore them.
I think that is a message that we hear all across America right now is you don't have access to due process if you've come into the country illegally. So what is the solution, Rebecca, for all of these activist judges out there?
Yeah, to your point, I mean, Democrats love to throw the phrase around, nobody is above the law, and that applies even to activist judges. And so most recently, there was this judge, I think it was in Michigan, who was arrested because she was defying all of these Trump directives. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. Other lawmakers I spoke to had a similar sentiment. They said they would like to see people who defy the law actually end up in jail. That applies to immigrants who enter the country illegally, and it applies to judges that violate the law. Border Czar Tom Homan said that this was on the table himself. He said that if you're going to violate the law, if you're going to violate immigration code, you are going to face legal repercussions. And I think that we're going to be seeing that ramp up, especially in these next few weeks as these activist judges continue to dig their heels in.
So, Rebecca, when we changed Blaze News tonight to Blaze News The Mandate, we were thinking of the first 100 days and, measuring our success as well as the president's by those first 100 days. I understand you asked all of these members of Congress what their take was on Trump's first 100 days. So what were some of the common themes that came out of that?
Across the board, it has been the border. And this is something that has been irrefutable, even for the president's critics. I mean, I turned on Politico Playbook this morning, as I do every morning, and even the Politico journalists had to acknowledge that, well, whether you like it or not, this has irrefutably been a success. And I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. We've seen there's different figures being thrown around, but in the upper 90% for actually reduction compared to the previous year or similar timeframes in terms of illegal crossings on the southern border. Caroline Leavitt said earlier today that between Inauguration Day and April 1st, there have only been 9 illegal criminals who have entered the country. And so this has been just an irrefutable win across the board for the administration, and all of the members of Congress that I spoke to felt the same.
So what do you think? If you had to, Rebecca, yourself, you've been out there this whole time covering all these 100 days. What sticks out to you the most about this administration so far?
I mean, the border, I think, is the obvious one, but I think that maybe this is a hot take. The economy is actually going to be a really exciting thing to see, especially in the next 100 days. The first 100 days on paper, it's kind of hard to explain to people maybe why this is going to be a positive thing in the long run. But it's nice to see that we have a commander-in-chief who's actually willing to make difficult choices and implement things like tariffs and actually use those bargaining chips to advocate for America and to negotiate a better, a more advantageous trade deal. And so I think that within those next 100 days, especially, we're going to see those first 100 days actually really pay off.
So what would you say the mood was among the members? I mean, and what's your read on what's going on now as all this budget stuff is hashed out? Is the Republican demeanor or attitude, is it positive? Is it bullish? Are people fighting? I mean, how do you make it out?
There's certainly a tone of optimism. I mean, don't listen to the legacy media that's trying to tell you that there's all this infighting, all of this backstabbing and all this sort of thing. There's none of that that I've seen, especially in the media row yesterday. Everybody was not just on the same page, but also in terms of messaging, but also extremely optimistic about the fate of the Republican Party and the fate of the country. And that's actually, sort of uncommon to see within a political party that has such a great ideological variation. And so to really see all of these Republicans united behind the president and so excited and invigorated following this first 100-day whirlwind, I think it's really great to see, and our audience should really be looking forward to the remainder of the Trump administration.
Well, I've noticed, though, on Capitol Hill, they were saying, okay, the deadline is going to be Memorial Day for the big, beautiful bill, tax cuts, everything that they want to get done. Rebecca, people are now pushing that back to the 4th of July. Apparently, we like holidays to make the deadlines for these certain bills. Is that going to happen? Do we think the 4th of July is now more appropriate for the time frame moving forward?
I mean, the initial time frame was certainly more aggressive, and that sort of goes against the commonplace practice in Congress. We know that they like to take their time, especially over on the Senate, not to point fingers or anything like that. And so, I mean, if you push it back, I think it's going to probably be more easy. Like I mentioned earlier, there is this huge discrepancy that they have to somehow reconcile. This $4 trillion cuts proposed on the House side versus the $400 billion that Senate Leader Thune said was the best that they could do. And so in terms of, actually accomplishing that, we'll have to see, of course, the holidays. The reason that they use those is because it's a great incentive to get out of town. And so if the deadline is actually placed around a holiday, I suppose that's promising.
I'll take your word for it. I hope that they can get it done at least by the 4th of July. It'll still be much quicker than normal times out there on Capitol Hill. Rebecca, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Well, don't go anywhere. We'll have my exclusive interview with Dr. Jay Bhattacharya next. we can be pretty honest right now. We know the conservatives are winning. We just heard it there from Rebecca. And the narrative, it's cracking right now with legacy media. People are waking up. We know the momentum is shifting, but the fight isn't over yet. And that's exactly why BlazeTV exists. We have to cut through all the noise of the legacy media. We have all the fearless reporting and the stories that the corporate media won't touch. So when you subscribe, you're not just watching, you're standing with a movement. And it's just $8 a month when you use code BNT at checkout. So go to blazetv.com/BNT right now and use the promo code BNT to save $20 on an annual plan. So let's keep winning together. Everybody loves winning. Blaze TV, it's unfiltered, unafraid, on demand. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya was recently confirmed as the director of the National Institute of Health. But while we were at the White House last week in Media Row, we sat down with him and we were talking to him about what he would hope to accomplish in this position. And we got to some big issues like autism and COVID. Take a look. Well, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, thanks so much for joining us and taking the time here today. So I want to start out because you were in Stanford, California, one of the most beautiful places in the country for decades. So what made you want to leave the comfort, the beauty, everything that you knew and loved to join this administration?
It is an absolute honor to actually use the things I've been working at for decades. I was at Stanford for almost 39 years, which is hard to say, and it was really hard to leave. But what President Trump offered me this chance to lead the NIH, who could say no? Like we can use this institution to actually make America healthy. Well, that's what I've been working toward my entire career. It's a very different environment in DC than Stanford, I'll grant you that.
Well, there's been so much to do in so little time, right? That's what they say. What do you want to get accomplished in your time here? How would you describe your approach to taking on this job?
So what I want to accomplish is I want to fulfill the mandate that President Trump and Secretary Kennedy gave to me, which is to use the NIH to do the research so that we can understand how to make America healthy. Right. So, for example, we just launched this major initiative where we're going to get the scientists across the country to actually answer the question, why is autism rising? I'm a scientist. I don't know the answer to that question. And frankly, it's a taboo question. I would like to have the NIH essentially get the scientists of the country to focus on it. And when they focus on it, they will get an answer, because we're really good at that if we can do that.
Yeah, let's dive into autism a little bit more, because if you look at it, the last 30 or 40 years, it has now become an epidemic. Right. But how do we go through and as a government just say, OK, we see the rates rising and allow this to go unchecked for now? We're going on decades.
Well, somehow the problem with autism is that first, the rise, when you look back, is just meteoric. Right. So, 1 in 1,000 just maybe a decade ago or 2 decades ago, 1 in 10,000. I mean, and now 1 in 31 is the latest number. But it's one of those things where it's a slow boil, right? Where you don't notice it. A lot of families just deal with it, and then on top of it, there's this overlay of if you notice it, that you're somehow anti-science, that somehow you automatically anti-vaccine if you just notice the fact that there are so many more autistic kids than there were when I was a kid, you put that together, and what you have is millions of families that don't have an answer to this question. But why is my child acting in this way? And there's a wide range. There's kids who are high functioning. I have lots of friends like that. They function a little bit different than other people, but they're really just they're great people. All of them are great people actually. But and then there's instances of autism what is very severe. Mm-hmm. Where people have repetitive motions and they're nonverbal, and the problem is if scientists can't ask why the rates are rising, then we can't get answers to these families. How best can I care for my kids? Right? That's really the question.
You mentioned you and Secretary Kennedy are working on this together now. Obviously, if this was simple to solve, we would have already done it. So there's not going to be a one-stop shop approach to this. So what benchmarks do the two of you plan on using to measure your progress throughout this?
Well, so first, we're cutting red tape so that we can actually get an answer, right? So the NIH is really good at providing these answers, but very often there's so much red tape to make it so that we get the support, the scientists that have the insights to answer the question. We're going to gather data from across the country in a way that protects confidentiality of the patients and the patients' rights. Not we're going to go find autistic kids and put them on newspapers. No, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the scientists have access to the data so they can actually answer the question. The benchmarks will be, in just a few months, we'll have a dozen or more research teams with where we chose them competitively from lots of research teams across the country. We'll put their proposals in. We'll choose them competitively to say, okay, who are the most giving the most promising questions. There'll be a range of methods, so like basic science, lab work to epidemiology to you name it, and with no holds barred as to the hypothesis. Right, whatever the scientists think might be promising as a cause, they'll be allowed to look at. And then we'll have answers from them. We'll get them to say, here's what our bottom line is over the course of the year or so.
I think that a lot of Americans are still just outraged that we don't have any answers for this. Another thing that is true for is COVID-19. And if memory serves correctly, your face was on posters all over Stanford's campus back in the day. So what was it like to be in your position, knowing the things that you knew, and actually being one of the lone voices that was willing to speak out against this when the rest of the industry was saying, no, you're wrong, and don't say the things that you're saying?
It was a shocking experience for me. I thought that scientists had free speech. I thought scientists had academic freedom, and I've learned differently in fact, probably the biggest problem during COVID was that. Like normally, if you can't have free speech, then you can't have science, is what I learned. And I think that's why we had such bad outcomes with COVID. We suppress speech of scientists, we suppress speech of the Biden administration, suppressed speech of normal Americans who questioned the school closures, the lockdowns, and all the policies that didn't actually protect anybody, that yet ended up harming so many people at scale. That's actually another one of my priorities. I want to restore free speech in science. I'm going to put in place policies within the NIH itself so the scientists at the NIH can say what they think. Maybe they'll disagree with me. That's fine. And restore the sense that Americans have that scientists respect their rights. We're not trying. A lot of times, actually, what happened during the Biden administration, you had the scientific institutions of this country funding scientists in order to suppress the free speech rights of Americans. It was absolutely shocking. President Trump, I think one of the first actions he did was to say no more of that, no more suppression of speech, no more censorship. And a big part of that is to make sure the scientific institutions of this country never again play a role of papering over, giving scientific cover to the censoring of speech.
Yeah, so you, along those lines, you had been critical of past NIH in the other previous administration. So when you look at this, you actually, I believe, called it a culture of cover-up, especially around COVID-19. So what are some of those things that you want to do, that you want to just signal to others that could potentially be in your shoes in the future?
Well, I mean, I think the cover-up, actually, probably the most important element of the cover-up was what caused the pandemic in the first place. Americans deserve an answer to that question. I've seen a lot of evidence from the outside which convinced me that it's very likely that this virus was the result of humans conducting experiments in China primarily, but unfortunately also with some NIH money and support. Americans deserve to know, the world deserves to know what happened, and even more importantly, the Americans deserve to know that our taxpayer money will never again go to doing experiments that have the potential to cause a pandemic. I think there's lots and lots of action within the administration on this, and I've seen just very hopeful signs that we want to put it. Most scientific research is not like this. We're not going to pose a danger of causing like mass scale destruction, right? We're not generally, exploding nuclear bombs or something. But some scientific experiments do have that capacity to do it. Not just the gain of function work that we were talking about. I want to make sure that the American public can say no to that kind of experimentation, that we use the money responsibly to make America healthy, not put Americans at risk.
I have to ask you, just on a personal note, when you see places like the New York Times coming out and they're like, oh, by the way, it was a lab leak. And people were so frustrated for years that it was only like a few voices out there saying, okay, these are the things that could possibly be there, and the silencing of information. And now to see publications like the New York Times and others come out and just say, oh, we've been here all along. We knew what you guys were saying the entire time, and count us in that group.
That's how you know you've won. I mean, I think it's unfortunate. Again, the censorship was the key thing, right? The censoring of voices, the censoring of scientific data, that on the lab leak, on vaccine injury, on the inefficacy of lockdowns, the harms for school kids, all of that. The censorship was the reason why we had the policy failure, and we're gonna reverse that in this administration. We've already worked to reverse that in this administration. President Trump has done a fantastic job on this.
Well, we look at the COVID shots then. That's the thing that is still ongoing at this point in time. We see all the VAERS numbers that are out there. We see there are still so many unreported side effects that are out there. And they're still, in many people's minds, dangerous. So they're still on the market right now? Is that what they should be? Are you going to take steps to address that?
So that's the FDA's job, right?
Yeah.
So the kind of job that I'm in charge of, that the National Institute of Health is, we can and we will put in programs so that we can ask questions about vaccine injury. Again, these are questions that are like normally taboo. You have the FDA sometimes sort of slowly look at it after the fact. Too slow, actually. The NIH should be involved in making sure that those questions can get asked. The scientists can get support for asking them and answering them. So I think it's going to find a range of, I think with the COVID vaccine in young men, there's really good evidence that we cause myocarditis, the heart inflammation in a lot of young men for no reason, really. The use of the COVID vaccine is really, at this point, almost, it's very, very low fraction of the population using it. And I think the FDA's policy, I don't know. I shouldn't speculate where it's headed. But what I'd like to see is more rigorous evaluation before you approve vaccines. Because when you're asking millions of healthy people to take it, you want to make sure that you have excellent evidence that you're not harming, subgroups of those people, and that you actually are preventing the disease you say you want to prevent.
So will NIH try to go through and fund future studies looking at mRNA and making sure that this is something that we should allow or not allow based on research?
I think the NIH will absolutely fund studies to understand better the safety profiles of new technologies, mRNA among them. So I think, but that's, again, the answers are going to be whatever science finds. I'm not going to put a thumb on the scale of it. And I just want to make sure I'm clear. A lot of the childhood vaccines are really worthwhile. And I gave my kids those childhood vaccines, measles, for instance, right? So I'm not against vaccines. What I'm in favor of is that we are honest about when these vaccines aren't working, and that we tell the American people that we've taken an honest look. And that's what the NIH can do, is we can say, let's support research to do that.
And I think that's all Americans are looking for, is a fair shake of everything, and not just looking at one bias or another, but just saying, here is all of the research and here's the conclusions that we found. But we're on our way to making America healthy again. Everybody's out there. It's all the rage right now. And you guys, artificial food dyes are no longer a thing in the United States.
We are no longer going to have kids ingesting petroleum-based dyes. What's funny is, I heard some of the pushback I heard was, well, there's no proof that they're harmful. Well, why would you give your kids petroleum-based dyes? If I were to run a study like that, you'd call it unethical. If I randomly inject petroleum-based dyes into kids. So why are we feeding our kids that at scale? It makes no sense. And
red dye 3, I remember they said that it was banned from cosmetics decades ago, but it's still safe for you in your food. It's okay. Don't worry about that.
What Dr. McCary, the head of the FDA, has said, and he's right. There are alternatives. You can put beet juice in to make if you want red. If you can put watermelon juice. There's other alternatives. The dyes that were approved here in Europe, the same companies sell them with beet juice, with watermelon juice, with actual natural ingredients rather than petroleum-based products. All
right, final question for you. It's just about DC, about the swamp. What's life been like for you in these last few weeks?
It's probably been a month I've been in office, and it feels like it's been 4 years. I just but it's exhilarating actually, because it's also I have this sense of great responsibility that I want to use the power that the NIH has, which is to induce excellent science for the benefit of the American people. That's what I at the end of my time here. And it eventually will end. I hope I can look back and say, yeah, we really did the work that made America healthier.
I think that if you're able to do that, the American people will be very, very happy with that. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
We'll have what you think about Trump's first 100 days in office. Stay tuned. Well, there's some big news to announce at Blaze TV. We are very happy to officially welcome Nicole Shanahan. She has her show Back to the People. She's going to be a part of the Blaze family. Now, Nicole, she's not your typical Silicon Valley insider. She is an attorney, an entrepreneur, and she's a fighter who spent years pushing for transparency and freedom and real change. And we know she's been a key voice in the MAGA movement. She's teamed up with RFK Jr. to take down all the elites and demand a government that actually works for the people. But her story took a turn because after years in the tech world, Nicole went through a powerful personal transition that brought her back to her faith, and it's completely reshaped how she sees the world. So now, on her new Blaze TV show, Back to the People, Nicole dives into the stories that the media won't touch, and she's bringing on experts, activists, and everyday Americans to talk about what's really going on and how we can fix it. So you can get a sneak peek of Nicole before she hits Blaze TV on our YouTube channel at Nicole-Shanahan. Just type in her name in the search and it'll definitely come up. So welcome to Blaze TV, Nicole. We're very excited to have you here. To celebrate Donald Trump's 100th day in office, I asked everybody on X to share Trump's biggest game changer so far. So let's get into some of the best replies that we had. We'll start with Jim. He says that people don't see it yet, but the tariffs will end up being a generational game changer that saved America from complete destruction. It's an interesting take that Jim's willing to go out there and say, it's going to be an absolute game changer for the country.
I mean, I sure hope so. I think he's right. If we stick to it and there's intelligent leadership moving forward, as there has been, so far. So I think we had to change, or we were in deep, deep trouble, and ripping off that Band-Aid now is essential. So now it's just about finishing the job.
Brass Tacks replies, fighting back with a unified message. Past Republican administrations took the mainstream media attacks seriously, ignoring and giving them legitimacy while trying to defend themselves. This administration anticipates the attack, rejects the premise, and lays down the facts with no wavering. Now, Rush Limbaugh's name was not explicitly used in that, but that is exactly a Rush Limbaugh thing.
Yes, and Rush Limbaugh was the champion of it. And every once in a while, you get a Republican politician in the past who would fight the media. The crowd would go wild. The people loved it. But that mainstream thought on this, on the right, was, even with very, very good people, was, well, you can't really fight the media, and we have the media we have, and you deal with it a certain way. That is all gone now. And I think I totally agree with him. This is the most refreshing thing about it is they do not care what these people think because they shouldn't. They don't give them any special access, and they just come out there and go right to the point over and over again and make the argument. And it's sort of like, believe what you say, I mean, and that's what they do.
Reject the premise always and forever. The final reply today is from Thomas. Has to be the crackdown on the southern border. The numbers show a dramatic drop in border crossings from Biden's time in office. We were told we needed new legislation to fix it, but we just needed a new president. And that is very true on multiple fronts, not just on the southern border.
Yes, and so it reveals the big lie was that this wasn't on purpose, right? We were not actually bringing these people on purpose. And now no one can make that case because you see how easy it was to stop, and that really is over. But I mean, I go back to this rejecting the media's premise. That is a game changer to see an entire administration and everyone within that administration just do this time and time again. They do not care what the media says. They reject the framework by which the box they're being put into by the media. And then what they do is come out and say the truth loudly and boldly. Simple, what people have been waiting for years. And it really is happening now every day.
And it's not only rejecting the premise from the media, but it's also the institutions, everything that they were trying to go do, and the reforms. They can't just be weak. We have to paint with bold colors, no pale pastels, to use Ronald Reagan's term.
Yeah. So the other thing that is great about what's going on is that on issue after issue, this administration and a lot of the entire right is going right for the jugular, going right for the big stuff. And in the past, there's this idea, well, you had to be prudent. You had to be careful. The way the world is, you can't just go in like bull in a china shop. And there's some truth to that, of course. But after a while, you reach a point when institutions decay so badly that it requires more work. It's like if you don't maintain your house and you let things go over time, eventually it's going to cost more money to fix, and you're going to have to fix bigger and bigger things, right? Because you didn't pay attention to them in the beginning, and you were too afraid, and you kind of nibbled around the edges, and you didn't really deal with it. That is what goes on with institutions, with any human institution, with any organization. And there's no better example in today's world than the universities. So take the Ivy League universities, take Princeton University, always in one of the top ranked institutions in the country. And this is an institution that simply used civil rights law to discriminate and to DEI all over the place, to take down pictures of people on the walls because of the color of their skin, to discriminate against certain kinds of students because of the color of their skin. They went hog wild with this stuff, unabashed, unapologetic. That's how bad we let it get. And now you see, Chris Rufo from the outside this week, and the administration, Harmeet Dillon in the U.S. Department of Justice, taking over the Civil Rights Division, cleaning house. 100 lawyers leave. Good. She wants them to. We want them to. They're terrible. What they're doing is awful. And they're going to use that office to, guess what? Actually enforce a colorblind civil rights law that Americans thought they passed in the 60s, but has been used for worse and worse things every year that has gone by. And what's going to happen to those institutions? You're talking about billions of dollars that's going to be threatened. That's going to be taken away by the federal government. You're talking about the lawsuits that will come because of the civil rights violations. And so now you just see a full-on attack. And what does that do? That diminishes their brand. Half the country already thinks that their brand is diminished and doesn't believe in higher education in general. And so now you see it was necessary, right, to just go right for the jugular, to just right attack. You can't nibble around the edges anymore. And that's what you're going to see, this wholesale reform. And once, if that picks up, if that keeps going, you're just going to see more of it. Because once you start doing it, you start looking under the floorboards and seeing what's there. It's even worse than you thought. And people start acknowledging how bad it is. And you just push further and farther. And that's something that, it's going to be ugly and it's going to be brutal in a lot of places throughout the government. I mean, think about the CIA needs to be reformed. Think about how many people in the CIA are gone. This is going to happen all over the place, but it has begun. And you have an administration that is a bunch of adults who are directly addressing the problem.
As the kids say, I voted for this. This is what everybody is waiting for, is to tackle these big problems, right? This feels like an unprecedented time in history. And this is exactly why we wanted to change to the mandate here on this show, because I remember we had Steve Deace on the show with us for a few months back. And he's like, I've never seen anything like this show before, because we are just following the administration every day, day in and day out, the headlines that are coming, and they're coming by fast every single day. But to go through and document what's happening, because there hasn't been a presidency like this in history. Even, we say it, Trump 1.0 versus Trump 2.0, they are completely different. The Democrats actually would have been much better off if they had just let Donald Trump win in 2020. We wouldn't have the renewed energy that we have right now. We wouldn't have an entire force behind this movement. And we wouldn't be going after these large institutions and DEI and everything else. Maybe we would have, around the edges a little bit. But now you have a people they are motivated and making sure this administration gets everything done. Because even just talking to the people when we were there last week in Washington, D.C., everybody understands that this is the amount of time that they have to push things forward and make actual change happen.
Yes, and I mean, the exciting part about it, as you say, this is such an exciting administration because of you, the people, because of we, the people, because the people gave this administration the mandate. The people gave the mandate to them. And those people understand that. They might have different ideas sometimes about how to implement the mandate, but they all know what it is, and they all know that they're there to implement it. And so, our job is to shine a light on that, to show what the obstacles are to the implementation of this mandate of the people that the Trump administration has, where the fights are at, what's really going on, what are the big stories behind the scenes, and it's following and holding accountable this administration to actually implement the mandate, which is to reform the administrative state and bring something like a Republican government back again, make Republican government great again.
Well, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya is one of the new great people that is within the administration, and my favorite moment out of that interview was when I was asking him, the New York Times is now going through and saying, oh, yeah, by the way, the lab leak, we've been there the whole time. We knew that was real. And I asked him what that was like to just see the New York Times join him and everybody else that was there a few years back. And he said, well, that means we're winning. And that is a great thing to hear, just to know that they were so dark times during the Biden administration, but the fact that we can make it through to the other side and actually have some optimism is a really, really powerful thing.
Oh, I mean, if you think back to wherever you were, Jill, during that time.
I don't want to.
And then imagine all of a sudden,
dark times.
We're fast forward, and you're looking at you're scrolling Twitter, and you see Dr. Jay Bhattacharya speaking truth and being persecuted for it during that time. And then you think, if you fast forward, right, this future is going to be so glorious. You'll be interviewing him in the White House, where he'll be leading NIH, which is exactly what he should be doing. Eminently qualified, his bravery needs to be rewarded, and there's a lot of good things that he's going to do. It's a great interview. You think about how far we've come. It really is it's like the momentum, is real. Now it's about driving the car,
What do you want to see from the next 100 days from the Trump administration and or the mandate?
Well, I think that as May Melman, the deputy for Stephen Miller, said in the interview that we did with her last week in D.C., it's now about figuring out really how to implement. I mean, so the first volley is a bunch of changes that you thought of before you even came into office, but now you're kind of looking at the intricacies of these departments, and you're thinking, what's the best way to move forward? How do I prioritize all the things that need to change, right? And so I think it's a lot more statesmanship now. It's a lot more managerial skill and figuring out, well, how do I prioritize, what to do next and what to target? And some organizations, it's like, how do I get rid of all the people here who aren't with the agenda? Other organizations, it's, how do I sue? Who do I sue and when for Harmeet,
Bring the lawsuits on. That's music to my ears. That's what everybody has been waiting for. We'll be looking forward to the next 100 days right alongside you. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.